Hey everybody, Darth Boy here, and I recently completed a somewhat marathon of Spider-Man 1 and 2. Now, I say a somewhat marathon, no, that I misspoke. A marathon of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Now, I might be going, Darth Boy, why you marathon this series again? Well, I love the Raimi Spider-Man films. I love the first two. I think they are two of the greatest comic book movies of all time, especially Spider-Man 2. I think it's a masterpiece of superhero storytelling, and I think without that movie, you would never have gotten very introspective and character study. Sorry, I'm just a little tired. Uh, Introspective superhero movies such as The Dark Knight and Logan. And potentially Black Widow. Hopefully, that movie will be uh, introspective as well. But let's focus on Spider-Man 3 and the theatrical cut, specifically of Spider-Man 3. I haven't seen the editor's cut yet. I plan on it when I rewatch the series, which I'll probably do in a couple months. Maybe around December. That'd be a good time to rewatch it, I think. But every time I watch Spider-Man 3, you know, I don't get the same feeling I get when I come away from rewatching Spider-Man 1 or 2. When I come back from watching Spider-Man 1 or 2, I get this feeling of, goddamn, that was fantastic. These are two of the greatest superhero movies of all time. They hold up amazingly well. They're well acted. They're well edited. They're well paced. In terms of the style of Raimi, I think it was perfect for Spider-Man, especially for the era he wanted to adapt. I think he wanted to modernize the 60s comics, and I think he did that pretty damn well, especially if you look at his choices of villains. But when we look at 3, we definitely got studio interference going on. But it's interesting how he tries to work around that studio interference with the casting of Topher Grace as Venom. Now, people don't like Topher Grace as Venom, and I think after watching the spectacular Spider-Man series and looking into, the other Spider-Man cartoons, Eddie Brock is supposed to be more of a beefy guy than Spider-Man. And there have been various iterations of Venom, so in my opinion, it's hard to nail down what Eddie Brock is supposed to really be. Maybe the crappy Venom movie that came out a few months, like a year ago, might go into that more. I'll give that another chance. I'll give that a chance because I own it on Blu-ray. But I'm gonna say I am okay with the casting of Topher Grace, considering what they were going for. They were going for, yeah, this is Peter Parker if he was a dickhead. Didn't have Uncle Ben. Was a delusional, opportunistic scumfuck. And that's what Eddie Brock is. He is a delusional, opportunistic asshole. He's very much that. And the movie sets him up to be that. The main problems are Sandman. The issue with Sandman comes into the retconning. And when I watch the movie, I go, this has potential to be okay. It really does. But given his accomplice, I'm like, would it really have been far-fetched to just keep him as Uncle Ben's main killer and just ditch Flint? I explained this to a friend of mine who I was talking to on the phone a while ago. My pitch, right, for a slight tweak to this idea would have been, have Sandman being Uncle Ben's killer be a red herring, right? They think it's Uncle Ben's killer, and the reason why is because they found the weapon used had Flint Marco's fingerprints on it, and that they maybe covered up some other fingerprints. Now, if we're going to keep it real, fingerprint forensic evidence can be a little sketchy. A lot of this shit can be a little sketchy. But if we're going by movie logic, his fingerprints, they discovered a few years down the road that Flint Marco's fingerprints were on the gun that killed Uncle Ben. And that led them to the conclusion that this guy killed Ben Parker, and he's got to go to jail. And there was also and now scrap the little notion of, he confessed to his cellmate. I do like the idea of him saying, I feel like I killed him. And the cellmate maybe embellishing the story. And Sandman's like, it wasn't like that to his wife. Like what happened with Ben Parker. And we kind of get that in the actual cut of the movie. But I really do like the idea of, instead of him being startled, to just have his partner be an asshole. They might go, that's a bit over the top. Do you have to rewatch the first movie to understand why I'm coming to this conclusion? The guy was willing to shoot a teenager in the fucking face. There was no working around that. This guy was an asshole. So is it far-fetched for us to say, yeah, this guy killed Uncle Ben? No. I don't think it is. Especially if he was... Like, if he didn't kill Uncle Ben in the movie, then why was he so willing to just shoot Peter in the face? Just, see ya. I mean, yes, criminals can be assholes, criminals can be scumfucks. But that's an especially scumfucky thing to really do. So, having him maybe shoot Uncle Ben, and then Flint going, what the fuck? Him tossing the gun, and going, see ya, Flint. He's like, yo, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? What are you doing? Sorry, man. No hard feelings, and just drives off. And then he's like, oh my god. Like, isn't paying attention, picks up the gun, not realizing that he now could be linked to a crime he didn't commit. Which is why he's so upset about it. Because it's such a triggering thing, because he knows he didn't do it. But every time it's brought up, he just freezes and freaks out due to some type of post-traumatic stress. And I think that would be a logical cause for a type of PTSD to happen. I mean, being the witness to someone getting killed will do that. I think if you tweak that just a little bit, and you could still have him go, I'm sorry. I just want you to understand. You can still have the ending scene. Just the reveal should be tweaked a little differently. Because you kind of wonder, well, if Peter still didn't do anything, would the outcome have really changed? I mean, Uncle Ben would have been robbed. Maybe something else would have startled Flint and Marco during that robbery or during the carjacking. And he would have shot Uncle Ben. The way they set it up, it seems as though Uncle Ben's death was inevitably going to happen regardless of Peter Parker's actions or not. And I feel that really hurts the perfection of the first film in terms of how great of an origin story it is and how great it retells the story of Spider-Man through film. I just have such an issue with how that was handled. I think it's a slight rewriting, save Venom for a Spider-Man 4. But Sony was like, no, you gotta release this shit now, man. Well, they released it, and it's an inferior film. It's not a terrible film. It's not one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's a very mixed bag film that, with a little more tweaking in the screenplay, had the potential to be great. But maybe not as good as Spider-Man 2. But I guess it goes to, as a conclusion of the Raimi series, is it a satisfying conclusion? No. The ending is just too goddamn depressing. Had they just reworked it a little bit, it would have been a solid film. Now I guess this is also going to lead into another thing. Well, what do you think of the Andrew Garfield films? From what I remember, I don't like them that much. I know years ago I said the first Amazing Spider-Man movie was fantastic and great, but I really think in retrospect I was 17. I think I was just very excited to see a new Spider-Man movie at the time, and I was just trying to be like, you know what, Andrew's got Tobey's blessing, giving the full context here, and I was just accepting, well, this is the new direction the series is going, and I'm just trying to prepare myself for this, what I was thinking would be a new franchise and a new trilogy instead of the 2 movies we got. Second film I hate. I remember just despising. Feeling very mixed about it at the time. And I think the reason why I despised it so much was similar to Spider-Man 3, is that it had the potential to be really damn good, and they just fucked it up. But I think the way The Amazing Spider-Man 2 did it was way worse than Spider-Man 3. The Raimi Spider-Man 3. I think the tone was just so damn inconsistent from the previous fucking movie. Like, the one thing you gotta give credit to the Raimi series, even in 3, it had a consistent fucking tone. 3 just took the goofiness a little bit too far, and it had some other minor tonal issues, you know, with throwing in the black suit and having that, and also having the story element of Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, and Peter's, and the setup of Spider-Man 3, and the concept of it, I still think is an amazing concept for a Spider-Man movie. Have Peter Parker get everything he wants in the beginning, and then throughout the movie, have him lose it. You know? And I really love that idea. It really makes Spider-Man... It's the appeal of Spider-Man is the tragedy of him. The guilt, the pain, the constant struggling that he goes through. It's what makes characters like him and a character like Batman so damn compelling. The issue with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I talk about it. I've only seen it one fucking time. You know, to be fair. Like, I'm a fan of I'll give you an example of a film I'm a fan of that people don't really care for. The Last Jedi. I love that movie. I will defend that movie like a madman. Especially as a Star Wars fan. But a lot of people don't like it, and I always encourage them, hey, maybe rewatch it or give it another chance, and, you know, try to accept the film for what it is. And here I am, the movie The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out 5 fucking years ago. I still hate it. I still remember things I hated about it vividly. I guess there's another part of me that's afraid of, oh, well, what if I like it this time around? And it's like, well, what if I do? I own it. I can just rewatch it. At the end of the day. But I don't know, he's got some dumb mental block shit. But I think I will try to give both of those films a chance. I think that's it. If you want to know what I think of the MCU Spider-Man, I think it's awesome. I love Holland as Spider-Man. You know, given that this is the third interpretation of the character, and I understand why they've held back on retreading elements from the previous 2 incarnations, that being Maguire and Garfield, but it's kind of getting to that point where it's like, you gotta bring Uncle Ben. You should just bring Uncle Ben in at this point. But it's like, we had Uncle Ben a bunch of other times. And I know they alluded to Uncle Ben very subtly in Civil War. I get it. But at the same time, Uncle Ben is a core reason why Spider-Man is Spider-Man. It's kind of dumb to just swap Uncle Ben for Tony Stark. Is it effective in the MCU? I think it does work. But at the same time, when you do such a risky reinterpretation of the character and his reasons for becoming Spider-Man and don't explore those reasons, you kind of hurt your interpretation despite it being pretty solid overall. That's just how I feel. You know, I joke that I'm a Sam Raimi stan. I might be, because I will defend the first 2 like a madman, but Spider-Man 3, and even Spider-Man 3 I'll defend here and there, but so I rewatched this after 5 years, and I did break my TV. This movie still sucks. But it sucks for like a lot of different reasons, you know. I think mainly because This had as much studio interference, if not more so, than Spider-Man 3. Now, if you want me to say, hey, as of this video, what do you feel is, well, between these two, what do you think is the best? I don't know. Probably this one, but this one also is kind of boring. This one at least has a few so bad it's good moments where you can just laugh at it. But at the same time, I'm going to turn my monitor off. You might say, oh, you're biased towards the Raimi series. Okay, sue me. I love this fucking series. I think it's my favorite Spider-Man series. It's my favorite interpretation of the character in media outside of the comics, or depending on which version of the comics. I grew up with this as the thing that got me into Spider-Man. But I'm going to sound crazy. Spider-Man 3, the theatrical cut, is... I don't want to say better, but I want to say more entertaining. There is not a dull moment in that movie. And the moments where they have character development are, sweet and good and intriguing. The biggest problem I have with it is how they retcon Uncle Ben's death. I think Spider-Man 3 was on the verge of being really, really good. Also just scrap Venom out of there. And I think you would have had a really good movie. Not as good as the first two. Because I think there was just something that really worked there. And I also saw an interesting video essay, just an interesting video that said Spider-Man 3 was doomed to fail from the beginning due to how the arc of Spider-Man was completed in the first two films. I'm not sure I fully agree with that sentiment, but I think Spider-Man 3 and the Raimi movies could have been handled a lot better. This series had an identity crisis. And its lead actor got fucked. He got really fucked. Because if anyone says, oh, you just don't like Garfield, I'm going to say this. I like Garfield as Spider-Man. I think Andrew Garfield does a good job with shitty material. I think he acts well. I think Andrew Garfield is undeniably a good actor. The man knows how to act. The man knows how to emote. Could I nitpick the hell out of his performance? Yes. But I think Garfield had potential to be a good Spider-Man if his character was written better. But then you have these movies that are just tonally weird. Like they don't connect. Even when... What do I mean tonally? Well, maybe color palette, I should say. Color palette... The color palettes between these two films are just really off-putting. Like when you go one after the other, which I did. I mean, narratively, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 addresses things in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, such as the cross-species genetics, the spider thing. They try to make the parents thing more interesting, despite that always being the thing that held that back. Because, we got to be different from this. And the solution they came up with was, let's just make it more convoluted. With Oscorp and all sorts of... you just cram all this stuff that would have worked in a cartoon, maybe? This convoluted crap you could get away with in a Saturday morning cartoon. You could get away with it. You could get away with this... Okay, the Spectacular Spider-Man show did that type of shit well. Did that shit that Norman Osborn was conspiring with the criminal underworld while also being Green Goblin. That was convoluted. No question. But it was like a 2-season television series. 30-minute episodes within those, I think it had 26 episodes. Versus a 2-hour, versus 4 hours plus worth of movies. The biggest problem with these movies also is the fucking pacing. The pacing in the movies is terrible. The biggest complaint you can say with Spider-Man 3, comparing to these two, and I'm comparing it to Spider-Man 3 only, because I don't think it's a fair comparison to compare to the first Raimi film or the second Raimi film. Because, in my opinion, and I gotta really preference that, because I know people who like the web series, I don't understand why you like it, or prefer it to the Raimi series. I really don't. I'm not saying the Raimi films aren't flawed. If I thought about it more, I could nitpick them. And maybe it is nostalgia, but when I rewatch the Raimi movies, I just get blown away by how great the first two films are. I get blown away by how epic they feel still, how well the pacing is, how well they hold up, narratively, dramatically. Comparing them to today's oversaturation of superhero films, they still hold up, and they're still great. And you understand why movies like that were the revitalization of the entire superhero genre. You also had X-Men and Blade thrown in there as well. Also, if I sound like I'm breathing too much, I have asthma, so that's why I breathe a lot when I talk. It actually is kind of hard for me to talk and breathe, so I apologize for that. But when I look at this movie, it's like, you gotta wonder, does this movie get Spider-Man? And they don't address Uncle Ben's killer. That is left unresolved for the whole series. It's like they have it for a little bit. It's like a revenge quest. Now the thing that, actually, this is weird as fuck. This is fucking weird. Like, the best parts of the Amazing Spider-Man series are how they really did try to innovate the webbing. The web swinging. They made that more immersive. And I like that idea. I like how that was conveyed. There's a lot of things, when I think about it, I can enjoy about them. I like the action sequences. I think they're, in the second one especially, over the top and stupid. But they're eye-catching. You can watch them. Is there a lot of weight to them emotionally? Not really. I don't think the fight scenes between Electro and Spider-Man are as intense as, say, the fights between, even a fight like with Harry and Peter, like the mansion fight, or when they first fight. There's a lot of errors in the visual effects department, but you also have to take into account that those movies were made in the early 2000s or the late 2000s, and they will not look as good comparatively, computer graphics wise, as the web films will. That's an unfair advantage. But in terms of how it flows, how intense it is, the music, the way the action is just set up, like, I'll give you an example. I will definitely take a sequence of Peter Parker trying to web swing his ring, the ring that Aunt May gave him, over the insanity of the first fight with Electro. Now, the first fight with Electro doesn't have some cool shit in it. Yeah, it does. I would be lying if it didn't. But it just doesn't have, like, that same type of suspense, and it should. But I think what really takes me out of that is Hans Zimmer's score. And I hate to bash Hans Zimmer. The man's a genius, but did James Horner die before that came out? Hold on a second. I have to see this. All right, let me check this out because I have to know. Do you know why I have a fuck face? They should have brought James Horner back. And I only say that because he didn't die until 2015. Like, I was thinking, oh, maybe he died before then, and he couldn't come back to do this one. But no, he could have come back. Or they could have just brought back Danny Elfman. That would have been fine. Let him redo a different type of Spider-Man score. It doesn't have to be a Raimi film. It doesn't have to be the Raimi Spider-Man score, but it can be its own thing. It's like, they don't have like the climactic Spider-Man music that was an allergic fight. That actually gives me goosebumps. I think that sequence is good. I think it's weird. I think while the Amazing Spider-Man 1 is kind of dull, I like the closeness of the action better than the actions in this than the action scenes in this one. The action scenes are bigger, and they might look cooler, but I think much like the original films, where its action scenes were really intense and really great, was the close encountersness, the close encountered, or the claustrophobic feeling of them. And that really builds on the suspense and whether Spider-Man is going to get out of this situation alive. The school sequence is a solid fight sequence and a good one-on-one fight. And Garfield does have a few good quips. But again, in terms of color palette, I guess I like the second one a little more. But I think the more I think about this, whatever strengths the Amazing Spider-Man 2 have are just bogged down by its convolutedness. And it's that unnecessary convolutedness of just trying to be like, Oscorp did all this shit. It's very cliche. It's, again, something that would be in a Saturday morning cartoon, but the Saturday morning cartoon did it better. Way better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2 did, and that's insane to say. But do I hate this one as much as I did 5 years ago, The Amazing Spider-Man 2? Do I hate it? I guess the answer I'm going to say is probably not. Do I think it's good? Hell no. I think there's a lot of really, 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 really dumb things in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that hold it back from being good. So I guess it's really insane to suggest that The Amazing Spider-Man... Holy shit, this... Yeah, this insert has gotten a little fucked over the years. You can see it. Yeah, I mean, I've just kept this on the damn shelf. But, like, I got the Amazing Spider-Man Q-disc in the player, but it's like... Sorry about that. But it's just really annoying, I guess. Or it's just not annoying. It's depressing. I think Mark Webb wanted to do his take on Spider-Man. I think the problem was I don't think he was a fan of the character or fully understood the character that well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the main thing or a main part of the first film he did about Peter trying to get revenge. The only time it made sense for Peter to get revenge, I think in Spider-Man 3, was when he thought, oh, I fucked up and he doesn't know what to do. And it's also, to be fair, the black suit influencing a lot of his darker emotions. So he's not thinking straight. Now, yes, Peter's an emotional teenager. They established that he's way more emotional. But is it written well to be an emotional, moody teenager? Is he more of like a social outcast that's also a bit of a nerd? I guess that's what they wanted to survive him as. They wanted to show that a social outcast had evolved in the past 10 years. But at the same time, comparing the Amazing Spider-Man series to what came before and after, it's really depressing. You know, I think what really angered me about Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the time, was I thought, and I think everyone did, that this was going to be a continuous thing. This was going to lead into a Spider-Man 3 and a Spider-Man 4. Amazing Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 4, and then a stupid Sinister Six movie that they wanted to establish. Which, by the way, the setup for their cinematic universe, which never fucking happened, is what killed it. It killed a lot of the drama. It killed a lot of the intrigue. You know, trying to make a Spider-Man movie build up to a larger universe is kind of dumb. And it's not interesting in the way that I think they wanted it to be. It's stupid. A Spider-Man story, to me, when it's just a Spider-Man story that doesn't revolve around an event, you know, like an event comic, is best when it's a story about him struggling to define himself, to figure out who he is, to figure out what with great power comes great responsibility, what that means to him. And the movie does try to be Spider-Man 2 in the sense, oh, Peter's done being Spider-Man because Gwen died. It is a compelling reason for him not to be Spider-Man anymore, but it's in the last couple of minutes of the movie. Now, I know they're supposed to... Now, I did like this part. I liked how visually, kind of like how Raimi did it. I guess I also just prefer Raimi's style in how he did Spider-Man as opposed to Mark Webb. I think Mark Webb did it way more exposition heavy in his series than Raimi did. Raimi let the visuals and the characters' actions and the reactions, tell the story. With these movies, the characters just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and it's just, shut up. I'm not a fucking idiot. I know what the fuck a movie is supposed to be, and it's a fucking film. It's a visual narrative. It is not an auditory narrative. It is not a book. You don't need to have so much exposition. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is really, really guilty of this. Especially. It just... this movie had potential to be really solid. Or at least good. Instead of just being so bad it's good. Having a few so bad it's good moments and just completely wasting a potentially great cast. Because that's what it does. And yeah, the death of Gwen is a good scene. It's like, hey, let's let the movie do something. But at the same time, it's like, here is obvious fan service. Here is obvious fan service. How is it obvious fan service? It's like one of my major complaints in my first review. Fan service. Ooh, Felicia. Obviously, Felicia Hardy, who's supposed to be Black Cat. Then you got Smythe, who's there for a little bit. Alistair Smythe. Then you've got the Sinister Six. Then you've got Gwen's wardrobe, which is clearly a reference to the death of Gwen Stacy comics. They're not being subtle. They even say, oh, our lives are short in Gwen's speech. And then the consistent use of Ghost Dad. Fucking Dennis Leary's Captain Stacy just being in your face. I guess what really annoys me about this series compared to the Raimi series, and the Raimi series, it's weird to say this, was more subtle, was more visually interesting. And I guess Raimi's style compared to Webb's style, what little he was, I don't really know if this was Webb's style or Sony breathing down his neck. It's hard for me to know if this was Webb's vision for Spider-Man. Or was this Sony nagging the shit out of him to do what they wanted because they wanted to compete with the MCU. But Kevin Feige's said it best. Peter's too indecisive. You can't have him do that. And then Gwen does the, oh, it's my choice thing. And then all you're thinking is, you dumbass, you're going to get yourself killed. I mean, at least with, oh my God. Who knew that I would be using Mary Jane Watson from the Raimi series as a positive comparing to the Webb series? But since this wants me to do that, hell, Zendaya's MJ is far better than fucking this Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Or certain scenes she is in. I was getting all offended oh, is she suggesting that Peter didn't think of something, and oh, this is why you were second to Midtown. And at the time, I was like, oh, why is she smarter than Peter? And then I was like, why does that bother me? I had to go, why does that bother me? And then it hit me, I guess it's sexist. It was a sexist thought that came into my head, and I realized, it doesn't really hurt the story that much for Gwen to be smarter than Peter. Does that really matter? Not really. And I guess this is because they wanted, it's the dumbest shit in this movie, in this series, is that it's with the Raimi series, right? Because let's just compare the first two films here. Let's fucking do it. Oh, you said you weren't going to do it. Yeah, well, I kind of have to, because Raimi did it better. Raimi did it much better than Webb. I really tried. I really, honestly tried to give The Amazing Series another chance. To look at The Amazing Series as its own thing. But it just feels like the Amazing series is, let's do the opposite of Raimi, and then when they felt that didn't work, let's try to do a Raimi Spider-Man movie, but not do like Raimi's Spider-Man movie in terms of color palette, but then can somewhat continue with the direction they were going, and then fucking it up with so much convoluted shit, it was ridiculous. But what was interesting about Raimi's Spider-Man movies is that it was all about Peter Parker. It was all about his story, his struggle. They didn't feel the need to focus on so many other fucking things that it distracted you from the fact that Peter and Spider-Man are one and the same. It is Peter's hero's journey. It is that journey and the relationships he has, whether it be his friends, his enemies, his friends that become enemies, that make this character so intriguing. I really think Raimi understood Spider-Man so much more than Mark Webb did. And I think the movies that they did, the first two films that Raimi did, and the only two films that Webb did, show that. And it's a shame because Avi Arad, and you have the same producing team that you did with the Raimi film. But I guess because this was more of an experimental time, it was the 2000s, not the 2010s, there was more leeway. But they really, really screwed themselves. And I'm not angry anymore. I'm just disappointed, really. Because this series is done. The Amazing Spider-Man series is done. There is no continuation. It's a dead series. It doesn't matter anymore. You know, we have Spider-Verse, which is amazing. We have the MCU movies, which are really fucking great. But the web series, it's like, you had so much wasted potential. You had an amazing cast of actors. You had scripts and screenplays that just needed work. Where it's like the villains aren't as compelling as they were in the Raimi movies. I mean, one thing I really love, and I really appreciate Willem Dafoe's Goblin the more I look back on it. And yes, Dafoe's Goblin is cheesy, it's over the top, but you know what? When you cast Willem Dafoe to play a villain, you're gonna get over the top. You're gonna get exaggeration. That's what you're gonna get when you cast Dafoe as a bad guy. So, he was a perfect Green Goblin. But he also conveyed that duality of Norman Osborn, you know, like he's this big, strong guy, like, not big, strong guy, but this big corporate guy you don't really want to fuck with. You know, the Goblin is his more sociopathic side come out in full force. And yet there's also, like, Goblin and Norman, you know, fucking with Peter at the end of the movie, which leads to his own demise. It's just when I think of the Raimi movies, especially the first Raimi film, comparing it to the first Webb film, and it's like you shouldn't compare them. You should look at it as its own series. And god damn it, I want to. I want to look at the Webb series as its own series. I want to, but this is a series that does not have a real identity. This is a series where at the time The Dark Knight was pretty popular. And it is still popular. But The Dark Knight had only come out a few years before this movie came out. So they thought, let's try to make, I guess, a grittier, darker Spider-Man movie. But it's not really gritty, or it's darker in moments, yeah. And then when that didn't work, they were like, let's go lighter again. Let's kind of do what Raimi did. Let's kind of do an MCU thing. And I said the pros and cons. Visually, it's a stunning and beautiful looking movie. I think The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a gorgeous film. I think in some ways, visually, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a better looking Spider-Man movie than some of the MCU stuff in live action. I can't believe I just said that, but when I think of it visually, it is a stunning, beautiful film. It is way better in terms of a color palette and in terms of visuals than its first film. But the first film, I think, has a better story. So it's like, you got a trade-off. You have shitty color palette in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, and you have a meh story that's a little convoluted, but not totally convoluted. And then you have meh. Like, I think you can watch The Amazing Spider-Man 1 still. If you like the Amazing Spider-Man series, please tell me why. I really have to know. I have to know what the hell you think makes these movies your favorite interpretation. Because I, to the life of me, cannot understand it. I really tried with this one. I really tried. Maybe I'll rewatch these again in a couple years or a couple months even. Maybe I'll go, maybe I missed it. But it sucks for me to say because when I go to movies that I feel very mixed on or borderline hate, there comes a moment where I go, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I didn't appreciate what the director was trying to do. Maybe I should give this another chance. And when I give it another chance, I either really like it, maybe even love it, or I at least understand what the director was trying to do. And with the Amazing Spider-Man series, it's hard to do that. I'm not as pissed off as I was in 2014 because we have great or at least good Spider-Man movies now. We've had 3 really solid ones. Only in the past 2 years. I guess the Amazing Spider-Man series is just a truly tragic series for me to look back on, to examine. Because it should have been a better series. Anyway, live long and prosper and have a nice day. Hopefully this is the last time I talk about the Amazing Spider-Man series. Okay, so I'm just going to add this part to the video so I don't have to do this, do it in a separate video. So you got this whole big video of me talking about Spider-Man shit. So let me just break this down. Spider-Man Homecoming. Really great film, really solid film, a nice reboot, a properly done reboot. It doesn't retread the origin. Any little bits of the origin that it does retread, they do it very well, very snappy, very quick. I like the smaller scale of it compared to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I just really love it as just a Spider-Man movie. I think it recaptured what makes Spider-Man an interesting character in film. Venom. Stupid. Venom is probably one of the dumbest movies I've seen, but I love it as a guilty pleasure. It was stupid. I just viewed it as, okay, this is probably what Venom would be without Spider-Man. So fuck it. I enjoy it. Spider-Verse. I did a long-ass video with a friend of mine about that movie. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, really quick, it's an amazing film. It is my second favorite Spider-Man movie. If you want my ranking for the Spider-Man movie, I thought it was pretty consistent, but it may have changed. So let's go through my ranking. Original Spider-Man 2 is my number 1 favorite of the whole series. Then we got Spider-Verse. Then we got very close to that number 2 spot, the original Raimi film. Then we got Homecoming, which is a really great film. And this is not including Far From Home. This is just the movies that are out on home video right now. Ignoring Far From Home, we got The Amazing Spider-Man 1. But, well, okay, not true. Then we got Spider-Man 3. Then The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Then The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I'm putting, and where does Venom go? Right below Spider-Man 3. So to recap. Original Spider-Man 2. Spider-Verse. Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man 3. Venom. Amazing Spider-Man 1. Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yes, I do think Venom is better on an entertainment level compared to the Amazing series as a whole. I know that's a bit controversial, but hey, wouldn't be my channel without a mild controversial opinion on the movie. So I think that's it. So live long and prosper and have a nice day.